My name is Witold Rybczynski, and I was Alvaro Ortega's first student, and then when he went back to his post at the UN, which was about, I think, 3 years later, I took over the leadership, and I don't remember how long, probably 10 or 15 years. But Alvaro is a good place to start because we're in a university, and universities are about teaching. And the minimum cost housing group was not about teaching. And I think that came, first of all, from the fact that Alvaro was not an academic. He wasn't interested in teaching. He was interested in exploring problems and solving problems, and based on his very big experience of countries around the world. And he was an architect. He was not a bureaucrat. He was not a UN bureaucrat like a professional careerist. He had had a career in Colombia building some extraordinary buildings, concrete buildings, shells, things like that. And it was the Civil War in Colombia that drove him out. And that's why he joined the UN. So unlike many UN people today who sort of, that's their career, that wasn't really the case with him. He was, first of all, an architect, a builder, I would say in a way a problem solver, but somebody who saw problems from his experience and wanted to explore solutions. So we didn't have courses, we didn't have seminars, we didn't have studios. I mean, we sat around talking. First of all, the first year we basically were just listening to his experiences, and then we started exploring various ideas which came from him. For example, the sulfur concrete was an obvious one because he had seen volcanic sulfur used as a kind of building material, and he wanted to explore whether you could actually exploit volcanic sulfur, which in certain countries was like the Philippines, where we later did some work together. You know, that was there. It was there, and you could. He felt you could use it more. I should say he had a very significant invention, really, under his name. And it deals with asbestos cement, which of course we don't use anymore because we discovered the bad effects of asbestos. Even as a cement form, it can degrade into the environment. It's very harmful if you ingest it. But we didn't know that. Certainly in the 50s, people didn't know that. And asbestos cement was used for roofing because it was fireproof, it didn't rust, it could span a reasonable distance, 4 or 5 feet, and it was, of course, waterproof, and it was a great material for roofing compared to galvanized metal, which is the alternative, which rusts, doesn't have a very long life. And I don't know if you've ever been in a house with a metal roof in a rainstorm, but it's incredibly noisy. So what he did is he figured out a way called a canaleta, which was a asbestos cement roof that could span about 40 feet. In other words, the roof could span the whole house. The problem with asbestos cement is relatively heavy. And so he figured out how you could span the whole house with asbestos cement. You didn't need any beams. You didn't need any support. We tested things, we measured things. Because even with the sulfur concrete, we were measuring the strength of things. And so there was a kind of tradition that you never did it on paper. It had to be at least a kind of prototype. This is the project for the priest in Quebec. That was the sort of realist project. It's kind of, when I look back on it, it's extremely reckless. Because buildings like this were not real buildings. It's a pavilion, you know, nobody's living in it. But this was a house for a priest who, I should say, he was like the organizer. And it was a kind of ridiculously difficult project because the users were nuns. I mean, nuns are very finicky sort of people. And so we had a composting toilet in there, And the nuns were quite horrified because they were not part of the initial project came from the priest. He saw, because he wanted to build a house, he didn't have much money, and he thought, but working with us, we could sort of do it much cheaper. But the nuns kind of were the users who were brought in later, and they had to actually deal with things. So I don't know if there's not a picture, but in the basement here was, and with a vent stack, was one of those Swedish composting toilets, and I had one in my own house, and it works, but it requires adaptability because periodically you get like infestations of fruit flies because you throw all the kitchen waste into it. And of course it's just rotten food, and